Gosh, I've been on X the last couple of days, and the amount of just pessimism I've seen on this app really just annoys me. Before you comment that X stirs hate, the answer is I know. I've also seen this around my friends, family, society, and my school. The world is just full of pessimism and hate. It seems like nowadays, in order to even make friends, you just need to speak about how terrible the world is, or how terrible your life is. I heard from a political YouTuber that in the political world, the way to blow up and become successful is to just be as negative and pessimistic about the world as possible. A lot of this has validity. You can see my video on why our generation is screwed as an example. But take a step back for just 10 minutes with me, and both of us can just appreciate our lives a little more than what we did before, and then we can both go back out into the crazy world we live in. Sound like a plan? Man? Or woman? I'll start off with something that you guys probably don't even think about. You need to work out to stay in shape. What do you think our ancestors 300 years ago would say if we purposely went to a place to feel pain, feel soreness, feel struggle, just so that we could lose the food that we just ate? We live in an era so full of comfort that we literally need to take time out of our day to do physical activity, because most people in our society don't have to be physically active in order to do their job. For millions of years, we would have to walk 10 to 18,000 steps a day on average, using these 10,000 to 18,000 steps to run after gazelle, or walk to a watering hole, or forage for food. And from like 10,000 BC to like 1800, almost 12,000 years, we were working 12 hours a day or more, breaking our backs, hoping that our crop would provide enough food for our family and a little bit of surplus for the people around us or to sell. Now we purposely go on hour-long runs and go to gyms to struggle with heavy weights. Why doesn't anyone talk about this more? Or how that 1/3 of our ancestors died before the age of 1, and 50% of our ancestors died before the age of 10 due to disease. And this was the case up till 150 years ago. Now, if you had 4 kids, it would be a tragedy if they died before 50. But if you had 4 kids in the past, you would know that you would probably lose 2 of your kids before the age of 10. This is why smallpox was almost entirely eliminated in the 19th century, because it was killing hundreds of millions of people just in the 19th century. Smallpox has literally killed billions of people and stopped tens of billions of people from being born. That's just one disease. Add in measles, polio, flu, tetanus, meningitis, and plagues like the Black Death. How come I never hear about this? People are always talking about how they wish they lived in the past, but the past just seems like a much more deadly place. And the weird thing is that I remember hearing about this 10 years ago when I was a little kid, but I haven't heard anyone talk about it since I got past like 3rd grade. Now let me just blow your mind real quick. If you think about it, there was a 50-50 chance in the past that you would just not exist right now. You have died before 10. From my personal experience, I got the flu when I was like around 4. If it had not been for modern medicine, there was a high chance that that would have been the end of me. It really puts everything into perspective. So be grateful, thank the world, thank God, thank our past ancestors for literally saving our lives, and use this as a reason to do something with your life and get off the couch. I know so many of us in our generation just think everything is meaningless and that there's no point in living. But if our ancestors had that same opinion, half of us would be dead. You remember from your history classes learning about all these people that die in famines? Or how if 2 guys got in an argument in China, then a famine would kill like 10 million people? For most Western countries, especially for Americans and Americans in the snow, we don't have to worry about starving. Many of these countries are some of the biggest net exporters of food in the world. The US has so much corn that even if like our wages dropped by 50%, we could still eat enough corn to feed us 3 meals a day. Whilst in the past, during the Middle Ages, if there were a couple winters in a row that were slightly off, it could lead to starvation within villages. Peasants would starve because they were expending more calories than they were intaking, and they had used all of their fat reserves. While in the US, 40% of the country is obese, and in some states, over half of the people are obese. We have so much cheap food that 40% of us can't even stop ourselves from becoming big, overweight blobs. So be grateful that you don't have to think about if you're gonna get enough food. Rather, you have to think about if you're eating too much food. Think about wars. There are some wars going on right now as I speak. My heart goes out to the people of Ukraine and Russia and the families of the Middle East. But for us Westerners, the nearest big war, as I'll call it, was World War II. And for us Americans, that war wasn't even especially bad for us. Other than the American Civil War, the last time there was a war on our soil was the War of 1812. Compare this to the past. In the Middle Ages, there was nearly constant warfare. Just think about the 100 Years' War, where England and France would burn each other's villages. Or in the Second Punic War, where a majority of upper-class Romans died, and a large amount of lower-class Romans did as well. If ancient sources are to be trusted, over 800,000 died in that war, which when the world was around 150 million people, would be like if 42.6 million people died in a war today. Or think about in the past, if your city was being sieged and you weren't able to hold out the invaders anymore, your entire city would be sacked. Most of the men killed, women raped, and everyone else who survived sold into slavery. Some think this may happen today. I'm not well versed in European affairs, so I'll stay out of that discussion, but I know here in America, there is no foreign power that could ever invade the US. The only way something like this could ever happen is if there was a civil war so large, each side didn't think of one another as Americans, and instead thought of each other as different. We haven't gotten to that point yet, and I see it very unlikely that we ever would. And you can see this in the American Civil War, where the two sides believed the others were Americans, but just had different ideas. And after the North won the war, the North forgave the South and allowed them back into the Union. So then again, check off another thing that you should be grateful for. Think of the household technologies you have. I know you've heard the saying that the phone in your pocket is stronger than the computers used for the moon landing. But not just that. You can use heaters to make your house as warm as you want. And you can use your air conditioners to make your house as cool as you want. We have fridges that can store food and make it fresh for a long time. And we have water at our disposal, which is extremely cheap. We can have a well-lit, bright environment for just a few cents a day, whenever we want. We have gaming systems that create alternate realities larger than the one we currently live in. We have the internet, a relatively easy to access source of communication with everybody and information with everybody, and a catalog of videos so large that you will never not have something to watch. Any question you have can probably be answered. Or how about if you get a bad headache? You can pop a Tylenol and it basically just goes away. These technologies may cause us pain, but I see that as a misuse of these technologies. Think about how great these technologies could be in 100 years if we set up the proper barriers of what they're used for and the strict social norms so that we don't overuse them. Think about what the lives of our descendants could be. Think of the progress we've made in the last 100 years. Or think about the opportunities you have. We live in an era of pretty bad social mobility compared to most other eras. But ask a family 500 years ago how their social mobility was. Even some of the bad aspects, comparative to other generations of today's society, are still infinitely better than what they were just 5 centuries ago. You could grow up in a bad neighborhood, and if you put in a large amount of work and get a little bit of luck on your side, you could become extremely wealthy. I wish our leaders, teachers, parents, and preachers would just take one day to talk about all the progress we've made, and just have a day where we can stop being so pessimistic about life. Because I'll be honest with you, I used to be that little kid that pointed out the faults in everything. I point out the bads and always talk about worst case scenario. I still do that sometimes, but I'm trying to better myself from this pessimistic past. In large part, I give that to my father, who was always the optimistic one of the family and always talking about the good of everything. Even if it was a little much sometimes, it was a needed balancing factor to my pessimism, and I'm grateful for that. I want you to go on a little mind trip. Imagine you are a starving peasant. From 14th century France during the 100 Years' War, you were randomly plucked out of your reality and fast forwarded to the 21st century in front of Walmart. You walk in and it's 200 people walking around thousands, possibly tens of thousands of pounds of food. You see the price of bread at $2.49 and you ask some average looking person, don't ask me how you know they're average, what their wages. They say, only 50,000. These damn employers, am I right? You laugh. But secretly you think about how the price of bread is 1/20,000th price of their salary. And forget about how you probably don't have the mathematical skills to even do that calculation. It makes you cry a little knowing that your descendants won't have to worry about starving to death like you. But when you look at the people, they look so sad. They're all complaining about these political figures and all the terror that they are doing. Do they not understand what privilege they live in? I have to work 12 to 14 hour days for most of the year and worry about me and my family starving on a regular basis. Why can't we all just be a little more like that 14th century peasant? Before you leave, I just want to give you 2 pieces of quick advice. First off, start meditating and be more mindful. Being mindful really allows you to critique your thoughts and change how you think. And include journaling too, especially when you're in deep thought and are having trouble dealing with it. And second, take a break from the internet sometime. Maybe once every day, just put your phone down, set a timer for 10 minutes and do nothing. The internet is amazing, but everybody on the internet acts like crazy ADHD cocaine addicts and add nihilism to everything, even when there's no need. Other than that, I hope I made you think a little better about where you are in the world. Make sure to put in the work, put in the hour, and think better. And I give you permission to go back out into the crazy.